Good morning. Today I want to talk a little bit about my personal journey of being a human rights defender and how I drew inspiration from the May 18 democratic uprising in Gwangju 40 years ago. My personal journey of activism for social justice, human rights, and peace building cannot be separated from that of my husband, Sombathsompon's journey of engagement and life work in building a better society in Laos, particularly improving the rural livelihoods of poor rural communities and improving education for young people of Laos. For Sombath, these actions of building improved justice, equality, and well-being for the Lao people are the basis for developing a democratic and rights-based society in the Lao context. But unfortunately, he became a victim of enforced disappearance 7 years ago in 2012. Now let me tell you a little bit about my husband, Sombathsomphon. Sombath studied at the University of Hawaii in the 1970s. He studied agriculture and returned to Laos in the 1980s. He was the first and only Laos student who came back to Laos. None of his fellow Laotian students came back because they were afraid of what the new government would do to them. Laos in 1975 was taken over by the Lao Communist Party, and it became a one-party controlled state. So many people at that time was afraid to come back to Laos. I supported Sombath's decision to come and return to Laos. And we both knew that returning to Laos, we have to take on a different kind of activism. Given Laos' communist system of government, not unlike that of North Korea, the struggle for freedom, democracy, and human rights must take on a much more low-profile approach. Instead, we focus on issues of Laos' high incidence of food insecurity and poverty, and struggle for peace after years of war as a rallying point for our work. We knew that we must use the Lao Communist Party's slogan to promote equality for the masses, especially for farmers and workers, and development through education for the poor to frame the way we work. Our work evolved around freedom from hunger, freedom from poverty, and freedom from ignorance, and drew inspiration from the international human rights framework of right to survival, right to education, right to sustainable livelihoods, which are all theoretically endorsed by the socialist ideology of the Lao government. Working humbly and quietly, but effectively, Sombath used his knowledge and skills to help rural communities improve production, education, hygiene and sanitation, and development of small rural enterprises. Sombath also started youth development programs to engage the young people, to enrich their school-based education with life skills education, and taught them how to use interactive media to reach out to other young people through radio programs, drama, and community exchange. All this were done in a way to empower the poor and the young to shape the development of their own communities and their own future in a practical and meaningful way. Sombath's quiet work for more than 30 years gained him regional and international recognition. In 2005, he was awarded the Ramon Magsaysay Award for Community and Youth Development. The Ramon Magsaysay Award is the Asia equivalent to the Nobel Prize. As a result, Sombath became well known as Laos' community development worker, championing the rights of the rural poor, and was recognized as Laos' leading civil society leader. Unfortunately, Sombath's recognition was not appreciated by the Lao Communist leadership, who was afraid that Sombath could become a rallying point to mobilize people against the one-party authoritarian regime. On 15 December 2012, Sombath was disappeared right in front of a police post, and his abduction was caught by the police CCTV camera. Despite the clear evidence of his abduction, the Lao government has denied any involvement and insisted that Sombath could have been kidnapped for personal or business reasons. The injustice of Sombath's disappearance shocked me. To see the most important person in my life, who spent his entire life working for the good of the people, disappeared in such a way, made me extremely distressed. It was a violation of Sombath's rights and a violation of my rights. I studied the issue of enforced disappearance, and I understood that repressive regimes often use enforced disappearance to silence their critics and use it as an intimidation tool to frighten the entire community. I became aware that in Asia, enforced disappearances is still used very broadly and widely. And it is used often to silence political critics, civil society activists, academics, journalists, and students. As days passed, my fear turned into despair. Fortunately, I was contacted by many wives and victims and family members of enforced disappearances. They reached out to me and advised me that I should have courage and I should not be afraid to speak up. They encouraged me to give interviews, to use social media and other forms of communication to tell the world what happened to Sombath. They told me that in all cases of enforced disappearance, it is the state's intention to intimidate family members and friends of the disappeared to keep quiet and not to seek truth and justice. They advised me that the best way to get truth and justice is to use all avenues to seek support to resolve the case. I had to use avenues like the United Nations and its special procedures, human rights reporting mechanisms, the international community, and the media to highlight the case and to hold the government accountable to reveal truth and justice for the case. I took their advice and I overcame my fear and despair. I transformed myself from a victim to become a human rights activist and a human rights defender, especially on the issue of enforced disappearance. I also drew inspiration from the May 18 uprising and the Gwangju Human Rights Award. When Sombath and I were students, we had followed the May 18 Gwangju uprising in 1980, 40 years ago. We had admired the courage of the students and the workers who stood up against the dictatorial military regime of Chun Do-wan and had sacrificed their own lives for freedom and democracy in Korea. In 2008, Sombath and I had the opportunity to visit Gwangju for the first time. The first place we went was to visit the National Cemetery for the May 18 Democratic Uprising. We walked around the cemetery and visited the Memorial Hall to remember the spirit of the May 18 Gwangju Uprising and learn more about the struggles for democracy, social justice, and peace as a process. Upon our return to Laos, Sombath often talked to the Lao young people about the Gwangju uprising and the role young people had played in their struggle for improved democracy in their own society. Then, on 18th of May 2015, Sombath was awarded the Gwangju Special Award for Human Rights. This award was an honor for Sombath. It also demonstrated that the May 18 Foundation wanted to use this award to acknowledge the contribution of Sombath's tireless work for Laos and for the Lao people. And like Sombath, I also strongly believe that people's aspirations for a better life, a better society, a better world could not be stopped by intimidation and subjugation forever. The sparks and the hope for, and the human desire for justice, freedom, democracy, and peace would ignite and spread as history has repeated itself and as the heroes of the Gwangju uprising has demonstrated. The May 18 Gwangju Award has boosted my courage and confidence to speak truth to power and to advocate for justice for the victims of human rights violations. Over the past few years, and especially after the Gwangju Human Rights Award in 2005, I have traveled the world and spoken openly and tirelessly to numerous human rights events, at press conferences, and on TV and radio interviews. I believe that the 40th anniversary of the May 18 Democratic Uprising is once more a very important marker to all freedom and democratic-loving people all over the world to remember the heroes of the May 18 Uprising and to draw renewed energy and strength to continue their struggle wherever they are. And to sustain my journey going forward, I will continue to draw inspiration from all the other victims of enforced disappearance and human rights violations, just like the heroes of the May 18 Democratic Uprising. And I will fight even harder for justice, human rights, peace, and democracy for all. Thank you.